That was the last time anyone laughs at me.
I'm Jake, and I need to share this because even now, 3 years later, I can barely believe how everything unfolded. This story still gives me chills when I think about it. It all started at this ridiculously expensive restaurant downtown where my girlfriend Emma had organized a dinner with her college friends. I really didn't want to go. These people always made me feel like I was just Emma's temporary placeholder until someone better came along. But Emma kept insisting for weeks, so I finally caved just to stop the arguments. The restaurant was one of those pretentious downtown places where a single entree costs what I make in 3 days at my office job. Emma had specifically chosen this spot to impress her friends, and I could tell she was nervous about making the right impression. We arrived fashionably late, and everyone was already seated at this massive table in the center of the dining room. There was Rebecca, who'd gone to law school and now worked at some major corporate firm downtown. Mason, a petroleum engineer who constantly talked about his oil and gas company, like he personally discovered crude oil. And Sophia, who owned her own advertising agency and never let anyone forget it. All of them had these impressive-sounding job titles that made people nod respectfully when they introduced themselves at parties. I took my seat next to Emma and immediately went into survival mode. That's always been my strategy at these social events. Smile politely, nod at appropriate moments, make the occasional safe comment, and just wait for it to be over. I ordered a beer while everyone else got expensive cocktails and tried to make myself as invisible as possible. The conversation immediately revolved around their latest career achievements, salary raises, and important projects that were supposedly changing their respective industries. Rebecca had just won some high-profile case that made the local news. Mason had returned from an industry conference in Houston, where he'd apparently given a presentation to hundreds of people. Sophia had landed $1 million account with some national retailer and wouldn't stop talking about the campaign strategy. They all spoke with that particular brand of confidence that comes from professional success and public recognition. Meanwhile, I just sat there sipping my beer and listening to them one-up each other for 2 solid hours. Emma kept glancing at me throughout dinner with this strange expression on her face, like she was evaluating something about me or trying to decide something important. Then came the moment that absolutely shattered my world. I don't remember exactly who asked the question first, but suddenly all eyes were on me, and someone wanted to know what I did for work. Emma cleared her throat dramatically and said the words that still make me physically sick to remember. "This is Jake. He works at some tiny office doing Excel spreadsheet stuff." Complete dead silence fell over the table. You could have heard a pin drop. Then she added, as if it were some kind of hilarious joke, "He'll probably never amount to anything important, but he's sweet enough." Everyone burst into that awful, condescending laughter that makes you feel like a small child who accidentally wandered into the adults' table. Rebecca immediately made some joke about paper pushers and administrative work. Mason asked with fake concern if I at least made a decent salary doing computer stuff. Sophia chimed in with something patronizing about how support roles are necessary too, and how every office needs someone to handle the boring tasks. They all laughed again, harder this time. I didn't laugh. I couldn't laugh. I somehow managed to produce a reflexive, completely empty smile so they wouldn't notice the absolute earthquake that had just torn through my entire sense of self. But inside, something fundamental broke forever that night. Something that could never be repaired. 4 years of our relationship. 4 years where I had enthusiastically shared my work projects, my professional goals, my small but personally significant achievements with her. 4 years during which she had systematically downplayed and minimized everything I accomplished at work. 4 years of her constantly suggesting I should aim higher and look for something better because her friends all had more successful boyfriends. And there she was, presenting me like her house pet to people I had just met, reducing 4 years of my professional life to Excel spreadsheet stuff and announcing to strangers that I'd never amount to anything important. The dinner continued for another excruciating hour. They talked about exotic vacations they'd taken, expensive cars they were planning to buy, and their ambitious future career plans. I participated just enough to avoid being outright rude, making appropriate noises at the right moments. Emma acted like absolutely nothing had happened, like she hadn't just publicly destroyed me in front of her friends. When someone complimented the restaurant's wine selection, She launched into this animated story about a wine tasting tour she wanted to take in Napa Valley. When we finally got home around midnight, she went straight to the bathroom for her nightly routine, humming some pop song like it had been just another pleasant evening out. Meanwhile, I stayed in the living room, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had just occurred. It wasn't the first time Emma had belittled my work. For 4 years, I'd been hearing subtle comments about how I should aim higher, how I should look for something better, how her friends had more successful boyfriends with impressive careers, but she had never humiliated me like that in public before, never announced to complete strangers that I was destined for mediocrity. I went to bed that night with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I was absolutely done being invisible to anyone, especially her. I was done letting someone minimize me because they didn't understand or care about what I actually did for a living. Emma slept soundly next to me, as peaceful as always, while I stayed awake until 5 in the morning thinking. By dawn, I had made the most important decision of my life. At 6 a.m., while Emma was still sleeping peacefully as if nothing had happened, I quietly packed a backpack with clothes for several days. I left a brief note on the kitchen table. Gone to stay with Lisa for a while. Need time to think about things. Then I drove across town to my older sister's apartment. Lisa took one look at my face when she opened the door and didn't ask any questions. She just made a pot of coffee, told me to make myself comfortable on her couch, and said I could stay however long I needed to figure things out. Lisa had always been more perceptive than me about relationship dynamics and personal boundaries. The first few days at Lisa's place were strange and disorienting. Emma sent me several casual text messages. When are you planning to come back? And don't be so dramatic about everything, and this whole thing will blow over if you just come home. Like I was throwing some childish tantrum over something completely trivial instead of having a legitimate emotional crisis. I didn't respond to any of her messages. Lisa would come home from her 12-hour nursing shifts and find me still sitting on her couch, processing everything that had happened. On Wednesday evening, she said something that completely changed my perspective on the entire situation. Jake, I have to ask you something. In 4 years of dating Emma, has she ever once actually asked you what you do at your job? She was absolutely right, and I realized it immediately. In 4 years together, Emma had never sat down to ask me in detail about the projects I managed, the specific responsibilities I had, or why I sometimes came home late or had to work weekends. To her, I was just the boyfriend who works with computers, and nothing more. Thursday brought the first real practical problem at our shared apartment. Emma called me for the first time since I'd left, and she sounded genuinely frustrated. Jake, the internet went down completely, and I have no idea who to call about it. I've been trying to work from home, and I can't get anything done. The thing was, I had always been the one who handled all our utilities and service calls. I had all the emergency phone numbers memorized, knew all the technicians by name, and understood when bills were due and how to pay them online. I gave her the internet service provider's customer service number and hung up without any further conversation. Friday brought another panicked call. I don't understand this electricity bill at all. It says it's overdue, but I never received anything in the mail. That was because all our utility bills came to my email address, and I had been paying them online every month for the past 3 years. I explained how to log into the electric company's website portal and hung up again. Saturday morning, while Lisa was at work pulling a double shift at the hospital, I was alone in her apartment for the first time all week. I decided to open my laptop and check my work email to catch up on anything I'd missed. What I discovered completely changed my perspective on everything. There were 5 different emails from various companies that had found my LinkedIn profile over the past few months. All of them were serious job offers with significantly better compensation and responsibilities. One was particularly interesting, a tech consulting firm in Seattle that needed someone to lead their entire data analytics department. They were offering a remote position with quarterly in-person meetings and a salary that was 40% higher than what I was currently making. That's when I realized something that should have been completely obvious. I was actually really good at what I did. Very good, in fact. Over the past few years, while Emma was dismissing my work as spreadsheet stuff, I had been quietly completing advanced certifications in database management, business intelligence, and statistical analysis. I had learned complex software platforms that most people in my field never mastered. I had single-handedly improved several processes at my current company that saved them literally thousands of dollars every month. I had automated reporting systems that reduced manual work by 70%. But because Emma had never shown any genuine interest in my professional development, I'd gradually stopped sharing my achievements with her. I had stopped talking about the recognition I received from my supervisors, the cost-saving initiatives I implemented, and the additional responsibilities I had taken on. Monday morning, I went to work with the clearest mind I'd had in months. My manager, Kevin, immediately asked if I was feeling better. Apparently, the positive change in my demeanor was that obvious to everyone around me. During my lunch break, I decided to call the Seattle company that had contacted me. The phone conversation lasted over an hour and a half. They were incredibly impressed with my background and experience. They explained that they needed someone who could build their analytics department from scratch, implement new data collection systems, and train junior staff members. Everything they described sounded like exactly what I had been doing at my current job, just on a much larger scale with proper recognition and compensation. They invited me to fly out for an in-person interview the following Thursday, with all expenses paid. That afternoon, I received Emma's first genuinely worried message since I had left. "Jake, please come back home immediately. The water heater broke completely, and I don't know who can fix it. I called 3 different plumber services, but none of them can come until next week. I've been taking cold showers for 2 days." I read her message 3 times, looking for any acknowledgement of what had happened at the restaurant, any apology for humiliating me in public, any recognition that she had deeply hurt me. There was nothing, just practical annoyance that things weren't functioning properly without me there to handle everything. I replied with basic information. "The plumber's name is Mike Rodriguez. He's in my phone contacts under Mike, emergency plumber. You can pay for expedited service if you want him to come sooner." Then, I didn't respond to anything else. Wednesday evening, Lisa came home from work and found me packing my clothes into a suitcase. "You're leaving already?" she asked with surprise. "I have that job interview in Seattle tomorrow morning. If it goes well, I'm planning to make some major changes in my life." Lisa smiled broadly. It was the first time she had seen me make a significant decision without consulting Emma first, without seeking her approval or permission. "Good for you," she said. "Emma's going to have to learn to appreciate what she had." The interview in Seattle on Thursday was absolutely incredible. The company was everything I had been looking for without even knowing it. Innovative, rapidly growing with a young but highly experienced team of professionals. The office was modern and collaborative, with state-of-the-art equipment and a corporate culture that actually valued analytical thinking and data-driven decision-making. They offered me the position on the spot with a 40% salary increase, comprehensive health benefits, stock options, and the opportunity to build their analytics department from the ground up. Most importantly, they showed genuine respect for the work I would be doing. They understood the value of data analysis and strategic insights. I accepted their offer immediately and gave them 3 weeks' notice to relocate. I returned to Lisa's apartment Friday evening, feeling absolutely euphoric for the first time in months. I had a new job, a new city, and a completely new future ahead of me. That night, Emma called me for the 6th time since I had left. Her tone had shifted noticeably. "Jake, this is completely ridiculous. The power got shut off because I couldn't figure out how to pay the bill online, and now the air conditioning is making horrible grinding noises. I need you to come look at it immediately." Her voice was still full of annoyance rather than any concern for our relationship or acknowledgement of what she had done wrong. "That's not my problem anymore, Emma," I told her calmly. "What do you mean it's not your problem? We live together. These are our shared responsibilities." "I don't live there anymore. I'm staying with Lisa indefinitely." "And when exactly are you planning to come back? Are you going to keep up this childish tantrum for the rest of your life?" I hung up without another word. Lisa looked at me from across her living room. "How do you feel right now?" "For the first time in years," I said honestly. "I feel important." The next 3 weeks were an absolute whirlwind of activity. I formally submitted my resignation at work, effective in 3 weeks. Kevin was genuinely surprised, but congratulated me enthusiastically. He told me I had been one of their most valuable employees, and that he completely understood my decision to pursue better professional opportunities. Several coworkers expressed similar sentiments and asked me to stay in touch. I spent hours online searching for apartments in Seattle and eventually found a perfect one-bedroom place with a balcony overlooking Pike Place Market. I submitted an application with first month's rent and security deposit. Emma continued calling throughout those weeks, but she sounded more desperate each time while still refusing to acknowledge what she had done wrong. Her messages were always about immediate practical problems, bills she couldn't figure out how to pay, household repairs she couldn't coordinate, online passwords she couldn't remember, service appointments she couldn't schedule. Never once did she offer an apology or acknowledge that she had publicly humiliated me. The final week before my move to Seattle, Lisa helped me retrieve all my belongings from the apartment I had shared with Emma. Emma had texted me that she would be having lunch with her mother that afternoon, so we had several hours to pack everything up. The apartment was in complete chaos when we arrived. Clothes were thrown everywhere. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. Important papers and unpaid bills were scattered across every surface. In the 3 weeks since I had been gone, Emma had proven she had absolutely no idea how to manage basic household responsibilities that I'd been handling for years. Lisa and I worked in silence, gathering my personal belongings. Clothes, books, computer equipment, kitchen appliances I had purchased, furniture I had bought before we moved in together. Lisa kept shaking her head in disbelief as we loaded box after box into her truck. "She really had no clue what you were doing around here," Lisa observed. Before leaving town permanently, I made one final stop at my old office building on a Sunday afternoon. I still had keys because I frequently worked weekends on important projects. I went up to my floor one last time and sat at my desk, looking around at the space where I had spent the past 4 years of my professional life. I wrote a note by hand on a piece of company letterhead and sealed it in an envelope with Emma's name written clearly on the outside. The note was brief but devastating in its simplicity. Then I went down to the lobby and found Marcus, the weekend security guard, who was reading a paperback novel behind the front desk. "Marcus, I need you to do me a favor," I said, approaching his desk. "If a woman ever comes here looking for me, blonde hair, about 5'6", probably upset and demanding to know where I am, I need you to give her this sealed envelope." I described Emma's appearance in detail, including the expensive designer handbag she always carried, and her tendency to speak loudly when frustrated. Then I handed him a $100 bill along with my building access cards and office keys. Marcus had known me for years and had always been friendly during our brief conversations. He was a retired police officer who worked security to stay busy, and he had that calm, professional demeanor that comes from dealing with all kinds of situations. He didn't ask any questions about the unusual request, just nodded and slipped the envelope into his desk drawer. The drive to Seattle was absolutely liberating. 8 hours on the interstate listening to music I loved, calling Lisa from rest stops to talk about possibilities and plans I hadn't let myself imagine in years. For the first time since that horrible dinner, I felt genuinely excited about my future. My new apartment was small but filled with natural light. One bedroom with a balcony that had a partial view of Elliott Bay. I had rented it sight unseen based only on photos and a virtual tour, but it was absolutely perfect for starting over. Monday was my first day at the new company. Everything they had promised during the interview process was true. Modern offices filled with collaborative workspaces, brilliant colleagues who were passionate about their projects, challenging assignments that would actually utilize my analytical skills. My supervisor, Michelle, introduced me to the entire team as our new analytics director who's going to revolutionize how we approach data insights and strategic planning. Nobody laughed. Nobody made condescending remarks about computer stuff or spreadsheet work. They treated me exactly as what I was, an experienced professional who was there to add serious value to their organization. During my first week in Seattle, Emma's phone calls continued, but something fundamental had changed in her tone. It was no longer just frustrated annoyance. It was genuine panic. Friday afternoon of my first week, I received a text message that said, "Jake, I'm driving to your office Monday morning. We need to have a serious face-to-face conversation. This situation has gone on way too long." I didn't reply to her message. That entire weekend, I couldn't sleep properly. I knew that Monday would be the day Emma finally discovered what had really happened, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely nervous about the confrontation. Monday afternoon around 2 o'clock, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number that had my old city's area code. I answered hesitantly. "Jake, this is Marcus from your old office building." His voice sounded shaken and confused. "Hey, Marcus, what's going on?" "That woman you told me about, the blonde one. She showed up here this morning asking for you." He paused for a long moment. "Jake, she completely lost it when she read your note. Started crying hysterically right there in the lobby. I had to get her some water and tissues from the front desk. Then she just ran out of the building." I was quiet, processing what he was telling me. "Jake, are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for calling to let me know, Marcus." "Jake, what exactly did you write in that note?" I smiled genuinely for the first time in days. "Just the truth, Marcus. Nothing but the absolute truth." About an hour later, Emma left a voicemail message on my phone that was nearly 3 minutes long. She wasn't crying anymore. She was absolutely furious, and I could hear that familiar edge in her voice that appeared whenever things didn't go according to her plans. "You left without telling me anything about your real plans or where you were actually going. You quit your job behind my back and moved across the entire country like a complete coward who can't face his problems. Is this honestly how you solve relationship issues? 4 years together, Jake. 4 years of building a life together thrown away because your feelings got hurt at one dinner with my friends?" There was a long pause where I could hear her breathing heavily. "And now I find out you were actually important at your job this whole time. That you had all these opportunities you never told me about. How convenient that you never bothered sharing any of this information with me. Was this some kind of elaborate test? Were you testing me all along to see how I'd react?" It was classic Emma. Even when she finally realized she had lost something valuable, she found a way to make it entirely my fault. I never responded to that voicemail message, and I never responded to any of her subsequent attempts to contact me. The following months in Seattle were genuinely some of the best of my entire life. I had a job that intellectually challenged me every single day, colleagues who valued my professional opinions and insights, projects that actually mattered and made a real difference for our clients. For the first time in years, I came home each evening feeling like I had accomplished something truly meaningful with my time and expertise. A year later, Lisa flew out to visit me for my birthday weekend. We spent Saturday evening drinking craft beer on the balcony of my new, much larger apartment with a spectacular view of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains. "You know," Lisa said, "Marcus has been telling people in the old neighborhood about the day some woman had a complete emotional breakdown in his office lobby after reading a mysterious note." "Really?" I laughed. "So what did you actually write in that note?" she asked with genuine curiosity. "Just the truth. That over the past 2 years, I had turned down 5 different job offers because I thought our relationship was more important than my career advancement. And that day, I had finally accepted the 6th offer." Lisa laughed and shook her head. Short, sweet, and devastating. "Sometimes," I said, looking out at the city lights, reflecting on the water, "the most powerful truths are also the simplest ones." That night, after Lisa had gone to sleep on my living room couch, I stood on my balcony, looking at Seattle's skyline and thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about Emma, but not with pain or anger anymore. I thought of her the way you remember a difficult but ultimately valuable lesson learned. It had taken me 4 years to realize that I deserved basic respect and recognition, but once I finally understood that fundamental truth, everything in my life changed for the better. Sometimes the most humiliating experiences teach us the most important lessons about ourselves, and sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply living well and proving your worth to people who actually appreciate it. It's been 3 years since that awful dinner, and I still think about that night sometimes. But now it feels like it happened to a different person entirely. Today, I manage a team of 18 highly skilled professionals at one of the most respected data consulting firms on the entire West Coast. My job involves solving complex strategic problems for Fortune 500 companies using advanced analytics and predictive modeling. I've spoken at industry conferences, published articles in trade journals, and have been recognized as one of the top analysts in my field. Last month, I got engaged to Sarah, a brilliant software architect I met at a tech meetup. When she introduces me to her friends, she talks about my work with genuine pride and interest. She asks detailed questions about my projects and celebrates my professional achievements. The contrast with my past relationship couldn't be more stark. I never again allow anyone to introduce me as the guy who does spreadsheet stuff, because it turns out I was always someone genuinely important. I was just invisible to the wrong person for too long. The difference is that now I know my true professional worth, and that knowledge changes absolutely everything about how I approach both my career and my relationships. Sometimes the people who claim to love you can't see your value, but that doesn't mean the value isn't there.